Hello, my name is Zena Taylor, and I've been a member here at Emerson for 35 years. In those years, I've participated in the life of this church in many ways. My two daughters grew up in the religious education program here at Emerson. I'm here representing the 7 members of the Ministerial Search Committee that managed the process resulting in Reverend Ed being here today. Welcome to Emerson. We are thrilled that so many members, friends, invited guests, and visitors are here with us to celebrate this significant event in the life of our church. The last time we held an installation service was 25 years ago, in November of 1999, when we installed the Reverends Mark and Becky Edmiston Lang. Emerson strives to create a beloved community. In doing this, we welcome all who would join with us in building a better world with more love, more justice, and more peace. We welcome all who would join with us in growing in mind and spirit. We welcome all who would join with us in tearing down systems of oppression of all kinds. We welcome all who would join their purposes to ours in a loving spirit of right relationship. Each week when we are gathered, we state these intentions aloud for all present to hear. Please join me today in reading the welcoming on the screen. Well, let me read it. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, wherever you find yourself on your life's journey, whichever your pronouns, whether you've walked in or rolled in or dialed in, whomever you love, you are welcome here. Thank you and welcome. I would now like to invite Reverend Sarah Prickett to light our chalice.
Hello, I bring greetings from the Woodlands, where I am the settled minister at Northwoods Unitarian Universalist Church, just 40 miles north of here, or as we like to say, near neighbors in Texas. Unitarian Universalists all around the world mark the sacred time they spend in community with each other by lighting a chalice. You could say that a lit chalice is one of the most recognizable symbols of our faith. This chalice started as a logo in World War II when it became an underground symbol to those assisting Unitarians, Jews, and other people escaping Nazi persecution. The symbol now continues in the form of a lit chalice. We light this chalice today to symbolize to all that the spirit of this church is strong and that our will to transform ourselves and the world is also strong. I now invite Dick Cheney to light our chalice this afternoon as we celebrate this important and joyous day in the life of the church. We light the flame with gratitude. We light the flame in memory of all who have gone before, in honor of all who are here now, and with joy for all who are yet to come. As Dick lights our chalice flame here in the sanctuary, I invite those of you joining us from home to light a candle or chalice of your own. And with our chalices lit here and remotely, I would like to invite you to join your voices with ours as we sing our first hymn. We're going to sing it as a round. So here is Julia Morsher to set us up.
Like, yay. Okay, we're gonna keep vamping. We're gonna do this side is 1, this side is 2, okay? Ready? Come. Number 1.
Hello. My name is Reverend Kaya Hartwood. My pronouns are she, they, and I am proud to serve on the board of the Texas Unitarian Universalist Justice Ministry, our UU State Action Network for Texas. I'm also the settled minister of the UU Church of the Brazos Valley in Bryan College Station, and they said to tell y'all howdy. Along with Emerson UU, we are among the approximately 40 member congregations of Texujum. This means that we are in the work of justice together. I bring you celebratory greetings on behalf of the Texas UU Justice Ministry and its executive director, the Reverend Aaron Walter, the organizers, and your fellow UU justice seekers and partners from all around the state. At Texujum, we work with congregations just like Emerson to educate and organize ourselves as Texas UUs with frontline partners to advocate effectively for UU values in public policy and the public square. We are so happy to be represented on your special day, and we are so thankful to Reverend Ed for his ministry and for prioritizing Emerson's relationship with Texujum from the beginning of his time in Texas. Emerson UU and its ministers have had an important role in Texujum from the very beginning. There were early conversations and strategy sessions between Gabe Gleb, Reverend Mark Edmondson Lang, Larry Hulbig, and later Reverend Chuck Freeman, the board leadership from Lisa Rocket, and advisory council service from Ellen Norton, support from members like Betsy Gleb and Carol Trout, and staff like Audrey Gale Hall. Most recently, Reverend Aaron and the Texujum board had our annual planning retreat here in August. It was great. Many of you have been donors and volunteers sending postcards, attending action hours, and we hope to see you at the Capitol this spring. All of this is to say, Emerson UU, you mean a lot to the Texas UU Justice Ministry. And Reverend Ed Prue, we are so thrilled for you and your ministry to have found such a justice-seeking home here. We look forward to working more closely in the years to come, bending Texas toward justice together. Congratulations to all. And now I would like to welcome Jody Bernstein from the Interfaith Ministries Houston.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much. My name's Jody Bernstein, and I am the Vice President of Interfaith Relations and Community Partnerships of Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. Interfaith Ministries partners with Emerson, with churches like Emerson, and with congregations of different faiths all across the city of Houston and in Galveston County. We bring people of diverse faith traditions together for dialogue, for collaboration, and for service, as a demonstration of our shared beliefs. We envision a community working and acting together in response to the needs of a greater Houston to create a more respectful, caring, and connected society. We are so happy to be represented on your special day today. On behalf of Interfaith Ministries, I bring greetings from our family to your family to welcome Reverend Ed and also to extend our hand in continued friendship and collaboration in our mutual quest to welcome the stranger, to feed the hungry, and also to empower understanding of the other. Under the leadership of Reverend Dr. Becky Edmonston Lang and now Reverend Ed, Emerson has always demonstrated a genuine love of people and of faith, and for this we are grateful for the opportunity to partner with you to serve the vulnerable, empower religious and cultural literacy, and unite people in volunteerism. And now, I would like to introduce Lillian Drab Braddock from the Unitarian Universalist Southern Region.
Hello, my name is Lillian Drab Braddock, and I'm a member of the Congregational Life staff in the Southern region of our Unitarian Universalist Association. Southern region staff serve our faith by fostering congregational health and vitality. The Unitarian Universalist Association is a manifestation of our living covenant that Emerson and all our congregations make with one another to live out and grow our faith in the world. Today, we share your joy as you install Reverend Ed Prue. Now, in the Southern region, we have had a strong partnership with Reverend Ed, and I gotta tell you, we're pretty excited that he was staying here in the South, coming to Texas, and to this vibrant congregation. I'm honored to share greetings from Unitarian Universalists throughout the South, our wider UU world, and to offer our steadfast support and partnership in the continued success of your ministry. Congratulations to you, Reverend Ed, and to the congregation on the beginning of this new collaborative ministry. And now I'd like to invite Reverend Dan King, who is going to bring today's first reading.
Thank you. I am pleased that I've become part of Ed's choir for a while, which is very nice to serve in a dual function today. The words I bring today are from a great Universalist minister who became also a great Unitarian Universalist minister in the 20th century and served for several years as president of our Starr King Seminary. Reverend Gordon McKeeman, whom I briefly knew as Bucky when he came to ministers' gatherings. It's about the nature of ministry to which Ed and our colleagues all serve, but also from Bucky's perspective, we as congregations serve ministry. He said, ministry is all that we do together. Ministry is that quality of being in community that affirms human dignity, that beckons forth hidden possibilities, that invites us into deeper, more constant, reverent relationships, and carries forward our heritage of hope and liberation. Ministry is what we do together as we celebrate triumphs of our human spirit, miracles of birth and life, wonders of devotion and sacrifice. Ministry is what we do together with one another in terror and torment, in grief and misery and in pain, but enabling us in the presence of death to say yes to life. We who minister speak and live the best we know with full knowledge that it is never quite enough, and yet we are reassured by lostness found by fragments reunited, by wounds healed, and joy shared. Ministry is what we all do together. And I know you are welcoming Ed to be your partner in ministry. And you are deserving to be congratulated. All of you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Chris Jimerson, and I bring you greetings from First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin, where I serve as settled co-lead minister. It's my pleasure to introduce the deliverer of our message this afternoon, the Reverend Nathan Ryan. Reverend Nathan Ryan has served Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge, Louisiana since 2012, first as an associate minister and more recently as its senior minister since 2020. Prior to serving the church in Baton Rouge, he was a religious educator at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Dallas. During his time there in Dallas, he earned the credentialed religious educator designation. And prior to Dallas, he is a very rare lifelong Unitarian Universalist, serving in volunteer roles at churches in Texas and Louisiana. Reverend Nathan and Reverend Ed met on their first day of seminary together at Meadville Lombard Theological School in the fall of 2009, where Reverend Nathan showed Reverend Ed how to make a vegan Cajun stew. A Louisiana native, Nathan also makes a mean red beans and rice, and believes that food goes a long way toward world peace. Emerson and Reverend Ed are happy to have Reverend Nathan with us on this important day. Reverend Nathan asked me to deliver this reading to you as you prepare to hear his words. The reading comes from Hope Jaron, who is a contemporary American geochemist and geobiologist at the University of Oslo, Norway. These words come from her 2016 book, Lab Girl, and are entitled, "A Seed Knows How to Wait." A seed knows how to wait. Most seeds wait for several years before starting to grow. A cherry seed can wait 100 years with no problem. What exactly each seed is waiting for is known only to that seed. Some unique trigger combination of temperature, moisture, light, and many other things is required to convince a seed to jump off the deep end and take its chance, to take its one and only chance to grow. A seed is alive while it waits. Every acorn on the ground is just as alive as the 300-year-old oak tree that towers over it. Neither the seed nor the old oak is growing. They are both just waiting. Their waiting differs, however, in that the seed is waiting to flourish, while the tree is only waiting to die. When you go into a forest, you probably tend to look up at the plants that have grown so much taller than you ever could. You probably don't look down, where just beneath your single footprint sits between 100 and 1,000 seeds, each one alive and waiting. When you are in the forest, for every tree that you see, there are no less than 3 million more trees waiting in the soil, fervently wishing to be. When the embryo within a seed starts to grow, it basically just stretches out of its doubled over waiting posture, elongating into official ownership of the form that it assumed years ago. The hard coat that surrounds a peach pit, a sesame or mustard seed, or a walnut shell mostly exists to prevent this expansion. In the laboratory, we simply scratch the hard coat and add a little water, and it's enough to make almost any seed grow. I must have cracked thousands of seeds over the years, and yet the next day's green never fails to amaze me. Something so hard can be so easy if you just have a little help. In the right place, under the right conditions, you can finally stretch out into whatever you are supposed to be. Each beginning is the end of a waiting. We are each given exactly one chance to be. Each of us is both impossible and inevitable. Every replete tree was first a seed that waited. And now, Reverend Nathan Ryan.
So I've never been good at taking care of plants. I've surrounded myself with plants that do not need any particular care. So I'm from Louisiana. We have azaleas everywhere. I think it's kind of similar to here climate-wise, but they're perfectly adapted for that climate because it's kind of a set it and then just let it go kind of plant. So I had 8 azalea bushes in the front of my house, and last summer in the middle of August, we had a major drought. In this period of perpetual weather disasters, it becomes easy to lose track of which, weather trauma happened at which point. And in the scope of my life, especially that summer where I saw a whole series of very unfortunate deaths, one of the least important things for me to pay attention to was the state of my azaleas. Like, I didn't know this. So, you know when it freezes, you're supposed to cover all your plants, and I would cover the azaleas, and my neighbors would look at me like I was an idiot, because apparently they don't freeze. But here's what they do. When there is a blistering heat, I believe last summer we went 60 days without going below 80 degrees. Does anyone remember that? I think Houston got hit just as, okay? Good. My azaleas started to dry up. The leaves turned brown and crispy, which I thought was just like a weird heat thing, and they would come back, but no, some of them died. And droughts in July in Louisiana are not normal. Every day in the summer, we're supposed to have that weird little blast of Gulf moisture like we're having today, as if I scripted it. And azaleas are cultivated to thrive and to grow and survive where I live. But because of our changing climate, these azaleas died in new normal circumstances. So Reverend Ed reached out to me to preach this sermon. He said he wanted me to cast a vision for Unitarian Universalism and to find hope for you. I got some bad news. Like, I know how we're supposed to do it. It's good, it's bad, and then it's good, and I'm going to do that. But I'm struggling to find hope right now. Anyone else? All right, this half. I don't know what y'all are doing, but I'm with you right now. And my congregation is struggling too. Our board just released their annual vision of ministry, so this is sort of the 3 sentences they create every year that craft what the staff is expected to do. And they're simple sentences like, bring hope to the world or fix the parking lot or whatever. But this year's vision included the words refuge, safety, hope, and survival. I stopped the board in their discussion of this and I asked them, Are you okay? Are you okay? And they said no. And you know how sometimes you get stuck in a place and when a thing happens, you're now better? And so I said to them, if the election goes away that you are hoping, would this change how hopeless you are feeling? And what did they say? No, absolutely not. So for a while, we were doing fine. You all had this bizarro government that was trying to oppress everyone, and we were actually doing okay. And then we decided to join you. And the state of Louisiana right now is pretty rough. So no matter who is the president coming up on January 20th, it is going to be hard to live in Louisiana if you have any semblance of living on the margins. I am guessing it's similar like that in Texas. Yes? All right. So when Ed asked me to share this message with you, I struggled because I'm looking for hope probably as much as you are. So I decided to title this sermon, Unitarian Universalism After the Azaleas Died. Let me tell you a little about myself, because we're still in the up, and then we'll do the down, and I'll come back up. I was raised in the greater New Orleans area. I think by your standards, I was raised in the Spring or the Woodlands of New Orleans. I was raised Unitarian Universalist. I heard my call to the ministry as a youth at rallies at some point in the mid-90s, and a piece of that call manifested when I was on your campus back in my teenage years. In fact, one of the people in my wedding party, her parents are singing in the choir. You get to figure out who they are. I married a Texan who I met at these rallies, and she's part of the reason I spent almost a decade in your state. Ed and I went to seminary, as was mentioned, and this is the paragraph where I'm supposed to lift him up, because that's what you do in a sermon. So this sentence is either going to mean I stop the sermon now, Ed, or we keep going. I have always been drawn to you, and specifically this this brilliant combination of insightful and obtuse. Congregation? This is not scripted here, but we were in seminary when Obama was running for president. And do you remember, was it Jeremiah Wright did the Goddamn America sermon? So Ed said, we're in Chicago, I'm going to go see that church. And he just went. Yeah. So ministry it's sometimes a humility desert. And Ed was a refreshing, always humble, always insightful person who was not, ministers like to act the part and chase how you're supposed to act the part, and Ed never did that. And so I want you to hear how lucky you got having Ed come. So back to the hope part. I think some of the hope comes from deep within the seeds of Unitarian Universalism. So just stick with me to this. We'll hit the misery in a few minutes. Because I was raised Unitarian Universalist, that is the only religion I have never known. I do not identify as a Unitarian Universalist Christian or an atheist or anything like that. In fact, in seminary, one of my professors told us to pick what theology we identified as, and I said Unitarian Universalist, and this guy was like the former president of the association, and he told me, no, you can't do that. If you have never been told no by the president of your faith, it stings. But for me, my beliefs are how I make sense of my experience. And I can tell you my beliefs are this until something in my life changes those beliefs. But my religion has been, and I hope will always be, Unitarian Universalism. And I grew up in the crest of the humanist wave in this denomination. I did not go to a church, I went to a society. We did not have prayer, we had meditation. We probably called hymns songs, anything to avoid naming ourselves as the religion that came out of Jesus' ministry. And I know that religion worked for many of my parents' and grandparents' generations, and I know that that manifestation of our faith helped them to make sense of the world. But for me, out in the real world as a child, that propensity utterly failed me. This propensity to avoid anything that could sound like any of those religious people that we were trying so hard to separate ourselves from. That left me unable to articulate this life-changing faith to many of my family and friends. It cut me and us off from the people who might have needed this faith. And why do that? I do not believe we have Unitarian Universalism were it not for the human Jesus. This is a man who saw people on the margins. He saw people that traditional religion, his religion, considered unworthy. He saw people who were being hurt and killed by the state, and especially when the state united with religion as one. And I am saying this right now, serving in a state where the legislature just picked their version of the Ten Commandments and mandated it to go into every classroom in the entire state. Elementary all the way through secondary education. Wait, no, what's college? All of the educations. Jesus was a religious man who saw the ways that his religion was used to hurt, to marginalize, and to kill, all in an attempt to consolidate power. If you read the Gospels, Jesus did not believe that he was God, certainly not the oldest Gospels. He gets a little more, I'm God, the further down you go. But like Mark, He did not believe in the Trinity. That was voted in hundreds of years later. He did not believe in hell. There's like a weird misinterpretation of the name of a garbage dump that we call hell, but that's a whole other sermon for a different day. So what do you call a religion guided around the idea that a person who did not believe in hell, did not believe he was God, and thought that love and justice always took priority over tradition and status quo? Oh, look at that. The minister started. I know many of us have worked hard to distance ourselves from our Christian roots. And while this religion allows each of us to have our own beliefs based on our experiences, one of the strengths of this faith, we trace our heritage back to the Congregationalists in white New England, who traced their roots back to the white Puritans. And I'm going to pause there. As much as I do not identify with any part of Puritanism, how much art do we have around here? I'm not calling you out. Like, my church is more austere than yours. But these white Puritans traced their heritage to the Protestant Reformation, who traced theirs through when Catholicism became a tool of the empire, who traced theirs to back when the churches were these small little groups of people who were gathered together under the idea that poor and rich should all be able to eat together. And all of that traces back to a man who was killed for saying that love of God and neighbor are more important than any religious dogma or rule of empire. I feel like as Jesus became Christ and Christianity became the religion of empire, our faith was taken from us. Unitarian Universalists love to identify ourselves as on the fringe, on the edge of our faith, the edge of the religious community. We love to think about how little power we have. We love to pretend that we're just the weirdos on the corner and that no one is going to love us. So I have a problem. My church actually knows me pretty well, and I have a dry sense of humor, and sometimes I script intending it to not be a joke, but people think it's a joke. I actually genuinely mean I think we're afraid of people not loving us. And I think because this religion means so much to me and probably so much to many of you, it's scary to be that vulnerable. But the reality is we have way more power than we're claiming. A pretty absurd amount of power when you consider the relative size of our faith. The reality of our faith is that we are intimately and intricately tied up with the American story. How many of you have gone to a heritage trip, a pilgrimage to Boston to see Unitarian Universalism? All right, so a lot up here, and then some of you in the back too. The American story and the Unitarian and Universalist stories are helplessly intertwined. All of the cognitive dissonance that you experience about this country and how it does and does not tell certain stories, those are also the stories of our faith. No, I'll skip that part. It's not a good part. I crossed it out and then I was going to bring it back. We also love to tell stories about how much we value diversity and how much we value inclusion, but we go out of our ways to separate ourselves from just about anyone we consider other than us. That includes, but is not limited to, black people and immigrants and poor people and people without degrees and people who we would identify as conservative. This religion has always had and cultivated an idea of us as the elites at the expense of everyone else. I blame the Puritans for that, which we have some of our heritage from. And for those who don't know, the Calvinists had this idea of the elect that God had predetermined, and then everyone else was going to hell. And we've still got that in our DNA, even though we've always been a non-Calvinistic religion. Does that make sense, or is that convoluted? All right, so enough that I can stay on script. Good. All right, so let's get back to the groundwork for hope. The thing we are doing today is the start of where I see it. I would like for you to think of every other Unitarian Universalist church. All of those churches that are able enough, rich enough, competent enough, and lucky enough to have professional ministry, because there's not a lot of them out there. And think about all of those who are willing to invite this minister in and to have a ritual celebrating this next chapter in your life. Not just his, but your life. Do you know way back in the day when the Unitarians were really, really rigid, the Universalists still did Christmas before the Unitarians would let anyone else do it? And on Christmas Day is when the Universalists had their installations and their ordinations and their building dedications because they thought it was that important of a day. We are doing something right now that has been going back for hundreds of years. All right, y'all want to do the hope now? Well, that was not good enough. I'm going to go to the misery. Until we can name where we are, we can't get to hope because a proper diagnosis determines treatment. So let's do the misery list since you weren't affirming enough on the hope. Ready? You want it? It doesn't matter because I've scripted it, so we're doing it. Start with the misery list. I was having a conversation with some colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and one of them said, only jokingly enough to allow the sugar to coat the pill they had to swallow, that they will still do this work, even if after this election goes a certain way and they wind up in a camp doing it. Now, I am well versed in Unitarian Universalist hyperbole, and this did not feel like that, not in the least. I don't need you to raise your hand, but how many of you are fearful of what is going to come in these next few weeks? All right, well, so some of you are raising, you're welcome to raise your hands, but I'm not you don't have to confess to this if you don't need to. I voted last week, early voted, and it was I'm used to, in Louisiana, voting and knowing how I'm going to lose often. But this was one of the first times I actually felt a sense of dread at the polling place. And in Louisiana and in Texas, and in some ways it doesn't matter who wins the presidency because the climate down here is so dangerous for so many people on the margins. Next on the misery list, we seem to be one of the few faiths that I know of that is taking the existential threat of climate change seriously. How many of you are worried that your kids or grandkids will not have the city to grow up in that you hope they would have? How many of you see no path for women or trans people to have autonomy over their body in the near future? There's some stuff going on in here, right? Not in this. I mean, like in here, the stuff that we're carrying, that's a lot for us to hold right now. These are some of the hardest times for us to be a people of a loving faith. And yet the world needs us and needs our power. And you may not know me, but I know this church. I was colleagues when Mark and Becky served here. I drove up from Baton Rouge when you had Mark's memorial service. I preached here the Sunday after Donald Trump won the election. I knew Hurricane Harvey because it almost came to Baton Rouge. And when you got hit by it, it reminded me of a few years earlier when we had more than 60 families in the Baton Rouge church flood on an unprecedented weather event. And then in 21, we had another 15 families flood in another unprecedented weather event. I had family in Texas when the freeze in 21 took out your power. I had a baby and a toddler at home at the time. And later, I knew we got power back after 18 hours, but I didn't know at the time that we would have it. You as a church have brought people into the ministry that you don't even know. You have done amazing things in this world that none of us may ever be privy to. Now are you ready for hope? Yeah. Do you want a little more misery? Okay. Good, we'll do the hope then. So here's what I think we need to do and where I see the hope. And because I'm a little bit of a rambly, confusing preacher, I've written down 4 things that we need to do to have Unitarian Universalism after the azaleas died, or more specifically, my azaleas died. 2 of them are kind of the get us ready, and then 2 of them are the vision for us going forward. They are in order: know what we can and can't do, dig $10 holes. Are y'all with me so far? Okay. 3 is to see the world as it actually is, and 4 is to let your light shine. So 1, we have to be very clear about what we can and cannot control. I mean, this is the Serenity Prayer manifested. Unitarians love to think that we are in control of everything, but we're not. We have never been, and we never will be. And it's important to separate out the questions of what you can and what you can't do. Can you control the hurricanes that come? Can you control who wins the election? I mean, like a little, but ultimately no, right? Can you control how you react after an election goes a certain way? Can you control whether or not you try to change the hearts and minds of people you care about? Can you control the drought? But you can water your azaleas. The second thing is to set things up right. Ever since my azalea disaster, and I'm going to do this because the world does not have enough white Unitarian ministers who talk about gardening way too much. I don't know which minister that was, but I broke one of you. I'm sorry. I have been trying to be a better steward of my plants. And in my research, there's one sentence that has come into my head over and over, and it's the number 2 of our 4 things. It is better to put a 10-cent plant in a $10 hole than it is the nicest building. You can bring in the nicest minister, but if you don't do the infrastructure work, it will not go well. I bought a persimmon tree right when I started this whole adventure like 8 years ago because I really wanted to have a persimmon tree. And I dug and I dug and I dug, and partially because we have clay and partially because there are these giant sycamore roots blocking the way, but I gave up after a few very miserable, sweaty hours. And I put that plant in too shallow of a hole. And the roots are still kind of sticking up and they get confused, and sometimes new trees pop out of those roots, which is not good for it. And it's because I dug a 10-cent hole and I put a $10 plant in. More recently, in front of what's left of my azaleas, I have spent weeks and weeks and weeks scouting out the land and watching where the sun and the water go. I laid down cardboard to kill off some of the grass, and then I brought in fresh soil and compost. I dug out a little trench so the water would have somewhere to go, and also so the grass would be confused and not be able to get into the garden. I did all of this so that the infrastructure for my plants would be better. And now I have a garden that supports okra and zinnias and sunflowers and green beans and mustard greens and strawberries, and so much growing right in the place where those azaleas were. Because I did the prep work and I trusted the plants to know what they were supposed to do, they're doing better than that poor, sad persimmon tree in the back. And until this week, because I wrote this last week, that was with 2 months of drought again. You can buy all of the right things for this religion. You can buy enough hymnals and buy the right technology. You can buy the right building. You can do all of the things to get the fanciest, nicest plant. But if you are not intentional with the infrastructure work, for us as a religious people, it will not go well. You can have the best minister in the world. See what I did there? But if you as individuals are not doing your work to take care of yourselves, to become spiritually healthy, you're putting a $10 plant in a 10-cent hole. Ministries do not live or die in the pulpit. They live and die in the relationships. And while a president and a board are incredibly important for a congregation, ministries are more often undermined by the parking lot conversations. They can be undermined by how little you trust each other, trust our leaders, and trust the clergy. You know, I sometimes guest preach at like teeny tiny churches that really want to be teeny tiny, and I noticed a pattern during worship in them. They'll almost stop the sermon to get ready to put the CD in the CD player to play the thing because they don't want to hire a piano player to have the music, but they go out of their way in the middle of the part of the service that could have a risk of having people be transformed to make sure that they know that there's no risk here. The Baton Rouge church where I serve is actually nice to each other. They actually trust each other. They care for each other. And I don't have to worry about those nitpicky little comments after a sermon or a decision or someone questioning leadership of either mine or a member of the staff or a leader in the church. And because of that, it is easier for us to trust real feedback when it comes in. And it's usually, I'm not talking about the president or leaders. I'm talking about your average church member. The only way your ministry will be successful is if you do the work individually, not just the leaders, but each of you do the work to be okay. So let me be specific. Go to therapy. I also don't know that you all are not in therapy. Ed didn't tell me any of this. This is generalized stuff. But go to therapy, take care of your bodies, practice being welcoming and forgiving to everyone you know. Do the work on yourself. Part of the thing about the $10 hole is you spend most of your time and energy setting up the plants for success. You give it the support it needs among the elements, and then you let it do what it's supposed to do. The Ten Commandments law that Louisiana is pulling in all of their foolishness, that is being challenged by the main plaintiff in that challenge is a Unitarian Universalist minister. And the only reason they found that minister is they reached out to the Baton Rouge church to ask if we knew anyone. Also, a family in the church who was a former president is part of that lawsuit. Last month, in response to the horrific anti-trans laws Louisiana has been passing, we held a giant queer music festival. We had more than 200 people. We even had someone who's here perform at it. And what happened is I didn't make any of that happen. I could have squashed it, but I didn't. But because the church was loving and trusting of each other and they spent their time on the $10 holes, this kind of stuff could grow out organically. There's a shift that needs to happen in every church. I saw it for me at some point after we reopened from COVID. So there was a point when I saw a lapsed member, whatever that means, in a grocery store, and I would want to say, we need you back. Come back. Like, we need more people in the seats. You will know there's a fundamental shift in your ministry, which I'm assuming you've already taken because I think you picked a great minister. But there's a fundamental shift in your ministry when you see that same person at the grocery store and you say, I am so sad you are missing the great stuff we're doing right now. I hope you come back soon because the train is going and it's fun. That's what our goal is as a religious people. Third, this is part of the casting the vision for our faith going forward, we have to see the world as it actually is. If we learned anything from the COVID shutdowns, it was that when people feel unsafe, they will fall back into the same patterns. And for many people down here, those patterns are making things partisan and pretending it didn't exist. These are patterns of learned behavior to find safety. The same people who are pushing these anti-trans, anti-women, anti-poor, the list of the 1,000 miserable laws that I'm sure y'all are passing as much as we are. But those are being pushed, these ideologies that are pushing those laws that tell you have to be a very specific way, these are being pushed by the same people who are being crushed by those ideologies. And it can feel good to rage at climate change, to rage at the drought, and to continue to ignore watering the plants, but we have to change, we have to adapt, we have to embrace this new world. I can keep assuming my azaleas can live in this world without any more of my support, but it's just not true. Similarly, we cannot keep doing our religion the same way we've always done it. We cannot afford to separate ourselves from the people who are being crushed by these suffocating theologies. We cannot keep holding on to this identity of us as the power elites, but somehow without any of the power. We have to let go of this idea that only the intellectual, only the lucky, only those who are white or rich or liberal have access to this faith. And that means loving and supporting each other, and especially this minister. It means doing the work that we need to do to figure out why our churches look so white, and it doesn't just mean with the leaders. Every one of us has to understand where we are in this world and what our culpability is. And here's my hint to you. You have plenty of people who are people of color or from different theological or intellectual backgrounds or different cultures. And it's not that our theology keeps them away, but we do small things over and over that tell people from different cultures they're not welcome here. I went to a mega church on my sabbatical to visit, and they talked about protein powder like a lot. I don't know anything about protein powder, but it was clear there was some cultural riverfront that I was not in. There are cultural things we do, and it's important that all of us pay attention and notice them. And it means seeing this faith for what it actually is. This is a religion with deep, deep roots that has always strived to prioritize love and justice over empire and division. I'm not suggesting we become Christians because making Jesus into Christ robbed him of his humanity, but I am suggesting that we re-embrace the very same understandings of the world that gave birth to this faith. Part of this reason that this faith failed me in the world as a child is because the religious folks who raised me pretended like we were somehow set apart and different from everyone else. This religion, when we see it as it actually is, can give us the theological language to be the counterbalance to all of the ways that religion has been used as a bludgeon and a fuel for insurrection, for division, and for violence. The final piece of this whole whatever it is, where you ask me to talk way too long, is to let your light shine. Each of us is a seed in waiting. The church is a seed in waiting. We don't need to make it grow. We need to do our work to set it right and then trust that it knows what to do. In the same way, each of you has a piece of the divine within you. Our task as a religious people is to create the ideal environment for all to thrive. Even the people we work so hard to separate ourselves from. Because those people out there, the ones we don't like, they're us. You have to know that it is of the utmost importance that you love the hell out of God, out of your neighbor, and out of yourself. Always know that you are worthy. Amen.
Today's offering will support the Unitarian Universalist Association Disaster Relief Fund. The Disaster Relief Fund disperses grants to UU congregations and recognized nonprofit entities. The fund is part of a covenant between the UUA and the congregations, between the congregations and those in need, and their community partners. By offering aid to our sibling congregations and their members and partners, we embody our faith and shared values. Your contribution to the fund allows us to respond quickly to current disaster needs as well as to new emergencies as they arrive. Thank you for your support. The offering will now be given and received.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love.
We're all set now. Reverend Ed, we called you to be our minister, to share the ministry of this church with us. We are a free church, and we extend to you the freedom to preach, teach, counsel us, and otherwise meet our needs as your conscience calls you to do. We would have you be here with us as a member of this beloved community, to speak your truth to us in love, to minister to us in all the stages of our lives, and to set forth, to embody, and to teach this highest task of faithfulness to the joyous, liberating, and redemptive faith we share. Today, we make a mutual commitment of love, care, and respect between the people of this church and Reverend Ed. But we will only realize our sacred purpose if we acknowledge our own obligation to our shared faith. I would now ask all members of this church to rise in body or spirit, and with me, and with the words written in your program, let us install our minister. And on the screen. I am ready and willing to take upon myself these commitments. I promise to fulfill them to the best of my ability. Reverend Ed, we do install you as our minister. We ask you to preach, teach, counsel, and to otherwise meet our needs as your conscience calls you to do. We ask you to do this in love and with a clear understanding of and commitment to Unitarian Universalism. Together, we seek to strengthen and increase the effectiveness of this church for each other, for the community of Houston, and beyond. Together, we may spread the important message of this joyous, liberating, and redemptive faith we share.
I even wrote those words, and they didn't feel that emotional to me as I wrote them, but standing here, that was very powerful. People of Emerson, I accept this shared ministry. I accept it knowing that we share a strength that derives from this faith we share. I pledge to do my devotion as together as we strive to our common goal, that of a strong, vibrant, living in harmony and goodness Emerson, and an Emerson that promotes diversity in an atmosphere of love and trust. I pledge to use the freedom of this office to minister to you and to minister with you, to meet you where you are, and to speak my truth. Now may we all say, well, okay, you're supposed to say, we walk our paths together. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you, and you may be seated. Reverend Ed, it is a tradition to give a stole to ministers on important days like this one. You have said that all but one of your stoles were received as gifts, and Emerson and all its members would like to give you another to add to your collection to mark this day. Our own Jill Rose made it for you and is here to present it. Did not make it. Is presented to you. I will now ask our Minister Emerita, the Reverend Dr. Becky Edmiston Lang, to deliver a prayer for the installation.
Hallelujah! Ed, you are now duly installed. You are plugged in. Do you feel electrified?
I feel something.
And what about you, Emerson? Are you electrified? Good afternoon. I am so overwhelmed to be here today. I am just thrilled. I am Becky Edmiston Lang. I'm the minister emerita of this congregation. I've been asked to lead a prayer, an installation prayer. I think you probably would like to sit down for this. Would you all join with me in the spirit of prayer and meditation? Infinite Spirit of life, mysterious source of being, all of our hearts are full this afternoon as we celebrate a new sacred covenant between minister and congregation. Here in this beautiful sanctuary where so many precious moments have transpired, this place which has witnessed joy and triumph, but sorrows and losses too. We are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. So many beloved people over the years have found their spiritual home here at Emerson, and it continues to be blessed by the people who call this church home today. So much love has moved within these walls and radiated out from them throughout Emerson's history. Love moves every time this congregation comes together, and never more than on this special day. We pray that love will continue to move here within individual hearts and between this congregation and this minister. We pray that their love for one another be deep enough to contain hurts and sorrows, strong enough to weather conflict and fear, ardent enough to inspire hope and purpose, and resilient enough to fulfill that purpose in these challenging times. We pray that the love experienced here will spill out beyond these walls, blessing people in this community, in the whole entire world. That the love within the hearts of these people and in this minister will be such that this church is a compelling, irresistible force for the beautiful, the just, and the true. We pray, too, that no one here now forgets the excitement and the joy of this day, that the energy generated in this moment will electrify this congregation and this minister for the work ahead, and that when spirits inevitably flag, the memory of this day will sustain them, energizing them anew, over and over again. Hallelujah. Amen. And blessed be. And now the Reverend Nell Newton will deliver the charge to the congregation.
Okay. You remember me, right? Good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I am Nell Newton, and I'm a free-range minister. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and it is so good to be with you again just a few short weeks later. First up, congratulations. When I heard that y'all had called Reverend Ed Prue as your settled minister, I knew all would be right with the world. And now, I have 2 basic charges and 2 specific charges to help this go well, okay? Let's attend to the basics first. You have called and installed a wonderful minister. And as much as I love and respect and admire him, I must remind us all that he is not perfect. He is not a perfect minister because such a creature does not exist. Reverend Ed is very skillful and he is attentive, but he will not be good at everything. Y'all will have to pitch in and fill in the gaps, right? A church is a place that needs everyone to show up and participate. He cannot carry it alone, okay? And there will be days when Reverend Ed falls short of expectations. To this, I will offer a reminder from our colleague, Reverend Brian Ferguson, who tells us, quote, "Unexpressed expectations are premeditated resentments." Spare yourselves, spare Reverend Ed, and be explicit with your needs and your expectations. Accept that there is imperfection in all directions and love accordingly. Now, here's the second basic. Stay connected. Reverend Ed has a wide network, and when he needs help, he asks for it. He calls upon his colleagues. But he cannot be the only one asking. When the congregation needs help, ask for it. Ask the Southern Region. Ask your neighboring UU congregations. Ask for help. You are part of a wider circle of care and concern, and others are ready to help. Okay, now, on to the 2 very specific charges. Those are very general. Number 1, Reverend Ed looks really good in a suit, right? And he can look all calm and respectable, and that's going to allow you all to get fierce and busy. And here's why. Your neighbors are hurting in 1,000 ways. But the saddest way that they are hurting is in disconnection. In gathering to worship, you are creating a place where the seeds of connection are planted, tended, and reaped, harvested every week. It can be messy. It can disrupt certain certainties. But a fierce commitment to connection will make this place a sanctuary of hope and love for those who were told that they were less than somewhere else. But those folks won't know that you are here unless you get fierce and get busy finding them and welcoming them and tending tenderly to one another's hearts. Reverend Ed will cheer you on, but you are the ones who have to get fierce and busy, loving the hell out of this world, one heart at a time. You might have to tend your own hearts first, but that's okay. That's part of the work. Specifics number 2. Have fun, okay? At seminary, we all admired Ed's no-nonsense approach to becoming a minister, right? While others were very overweeningly earnest, Ed maintained this level-headed practicality. We were in awe of how he could just be so magnificently unsentimental. You know that, right? Yeah. We were like, how does he do it? But when I got to know Ed, I was charmed to realize that he is having fun. He loves good food. He loves silly songs. So my charge to you is this. Do not take yourselves too seriously, okay? And do not mistake your minister for a stuffy, growly old bear. He's an otter. And he likes a party. Make the kind of fun that includes kids and introverts. Make sure that there's enough and invite your neighbors. I am a mystic of the mud and the clouds, so I know that all is right with this world, but it is even more right with Reverend Ed Prue as your minister. Knowing that all is right should free you up to be courageous, get fierce, build a reputation as the folks who throw a good party. So get busy, y'all. The world needs you. May it be so. And now I invite my colleague, Reverend Dr. Colin Bosson, to the pulpit.
And Ed, I'm going to ask you to come back up here, because this is a charge to the minister, which means that I'm actually talking to you, and everybody else just gets to watch. And I get to make the last statement that you're going to hear before you offer us the benediction. It's the only time during this whole service, other than during the act of installation, where you get to actually really say anything. It's the first act of your newly formalized ministry. You know, after the greetings have been given, after you've been blessed and admonished, preached to, lifted up in prayer, and, well, generally fussed over, you get to say something. A benediction, the roots are Latin. We have bene, meaning well, and we have diction, which is to speak. Smash them together, and you get something like well speaking or the good word. So, Ed, how are you going to speak well to us? What good word do you have to offer? Since you asked me to give the charge to the minister, I kind of thought it was too. But you're getting my advice. And I have a tendency to lean into our tradition on such matters. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to pull out some really dusty tomb and suggest that we look to ancient and obscure history for inspiration. This is not a charge drawn from the August 1618 epistles that the English Unitarians wrote to the Moroccan ambassador, Ahmed Bet Ahmed. Nor does it invoke Olivia Brown's 1920 sermon, The Opening of the Doors, in which she confidently told us universalism shall at last win the world. Though, of course, distant moments such as those always have something to tell us. Remind us, for instance, that our theology has always been pluralistic, so you should be seeking wisdom widely rather than on a narrow path. And that we are called to spread our vision of the power of love and the possibility of human goodness, which our friend A. Powell Davies named the temptation to be good, as far as we can. But instead, I want to share two gifts that were given to me from elders of our tradition. The first comes by way of Carl Scoville. He was, or is, a renowned preacher who enjoyed a 45-year ministry in Boston. Respected for his deep spiritual life, Carl was also known for his sense of humor. He penned pieces organized around deep spiritual questions such as, why didn't you warn me about Christmas pageants? I'm not going to warn you about Christmas pageants. Well, if you've made it thus far, you've probably figured out that the secret to them is find someone else to organize them. Rather, I'm going to share with you something that Carl told his colleagues on the occasion of his 60th anniversary to his ordination. He said, "We live in a world without context, but context is everything." Context is everything. My first gift to you is to remember that you have been called to a ministry with a particular group of people in a particular time and in a particular place. There's something that only you can do together, and it's up for you and the congregation to uncover this shared ministry. And that spirit of that shared ministry is going to feel different here in Houston than it did in Florida or in Boston, or even over in the museum district. All those spaces are filled with unique communities with their own beautifully complicated stories. So what is the story that you and Emerson are going to tell together here in the Galleria? And the win, as our friend Nathan lifted up, of where you're developing your shared ministry really matters, because you're ministering in the neo-Confederate South, in a state governed by the politics of cruelty, amidst all of that misery that Nathan mentioned, during a time of rising inequality and at the center, or one of the centers, of the climate catastrophe. So the kinds of religious practice that matter for you and the members of Emerson, the ways that you'll hold each other, celebrate to each other, feel the spirit that binds each to all, are going to be different than what inspired earlier generations. You got to find your own way. And my second gift is from Jack Mendelson. Jack, like Carl, was considered one of the most talented ministers of the 20th century. And when I was starting out, I went to him for advice on how to build a strong shared ministry. He said, "Well, you and the congregation cannot get caught up in narcissistic, spiritual navel-gazing. If you can avoid that, then you can create a ministry that matters." Avoid narcissistic spiritual navel-gazing. Part of the purpose of a Unitarian Universalist congregation is to serve the wider world. In our tradition, community service, the work of building a more beautiful world, is an essential spiritual practice. Don't let anyone tell you differently. It's not the only one, but if we fail to place it at the center of our life together, well, narcissistic, spiritual navel-gazing. Context: Carl's gift to stay rooted in the lives, the stories, the glories, the tears, the laughter, the bad jokes, the inevitable argument around the budget, the questions about what kind of pastries to serve at the coffee hour, all the muck and mire, all the luminous sparkle that form your congregation and unfold in Houston. Always ask, how can I help the people I serve uncover their sparks while we sit amid all the tumult and the strife? Purpose: Jack's gift is a charge that your shared ministry is not just for you and your congregation alone. You're called to move beyond the walls and engage with all that besets us. We are on the knife's edge. A ministry that speaks directly to the needs of our city and our society right now is needed. Context, purpose, and thus charged, I send you forth with these gifts: a sharpened awareness of where, when we are, and a clarifying focus. Lead with conviction, lead with humility. Know that your life and the life of all of those that you encounter are our blessing. Stay rooted in love and do what you can to bring more beauty in the world. So I think now we're just about ready for your good word. And I know it will be a strong one, but before we get there, I think I have to invite the congregation to rise in body or spirit and join together in singing hymn number 1017, found in the Teal hymn book.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. Feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. 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 Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. 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 Without peace, the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our
I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel the Holy Spirit in this place a little bit, aren't you? Whoo, feel it. Can you feel it? It's a beautiful thing. I am fully aware that I am the only thing standing between you and barbecue. And you've been here a long time. I'm going to keep this brief. I just want to say thank you to the sea of faces that I see here with me. I hope you have gotten from this what I've gotten from this, which is joy and love and faith in this church and in this faith that we share together. For those of you who are joining us online, thank you so much. We are so happy you were able to be here with us today. After we exit the sanctuary, we will end our stream, but we hope to see you back as soon as we can. And we are so grateful you were able to come with us on this journey this morning. So, as Reverend Colin charged me to do, here is my benediction, my same benediction that I give you almost every week. I ask you to be more and more aware of the communities of which you are a part. I ask you to be more and more aware of your role in those communities. Be more aware of how you co-create their journeys with them and how they co-create your journey for you. Amen? Amen. We're going to walk out, and then we're going to get us some barbecue. No, we're going to walk out, and then we're going to get some wine. Even better, we're going to have a little bit of drinks first, and then we'll have barbecue. Sorry, Carol.